Hail, and well met. May the gods be with you on this finest of eves, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of All-Father. I, Ulfhedinn, Odin's son, take you by the hand. I cordially invite you to my stead, where I shall regale you with the most famous stories in the Norse mythos, the very backbone of my heathen faith. Today marks the first part in a trifecta of tales, beginning with one of my favourites. Come, sit with me by the fire, pour yourself a tall horn of mead, and grab yourself a snack. For this is the story of Thor and Loki. One day, a long time ago, gods of Asgard, Thor and Loki, were riding across the 9 worlds. In Thor's wain, pulled by his goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. It soon approached nightfall, and in the distance the pair spotted a welcoming-looking farmhouse, with lights aglow in the windows. Thor and Loki arranged lodging for the night with the farmer and his wife, the couple who had bare 2 children, a daughter by the name of Roskva, and a son called Hjalfi. That night, Thor slaughtered his goats and invited all to eat with him. He laid out the pelts for them to lay the bones upon. But, against one of Thor's instructions, the son Hjalfi broke one of the bones in order to suck the marrow. But the next day, when Thor hallowed the bones and brought the goats back to life, he had noticed that one of the goats had a lame hind leg, and in that moment he knew what Thor must have happened. Angry and furious, Thor was ready to kill the family, but the father had offered his 2 children. He said to Thor, "We do not wish to anger you, almighty thunder god. Please, take my son, take my daughter. Do us the honor of sparing our lives, and may they serve you well." And Thor agreed. Leaving the goats behind, Thor and his companions then began the treacherous journey to Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Across vast deep ocean and through old forest, until it began to grow dark again. As they were looking for a place to camp, they spotted a great hall in the forest that no one seemed to be occupying, and they decided to settle down for the night inside of it. In the middle of the night, Thor awoke to a great sound that shook the land like an earthquake. A most terrifying sound indeed. Thor brought the others into another, smaller room in the hall, and stayed near the door with his hammer, Mjolnir in hand, ready to defend them at any cost. But when the sun rose the next day, Thor went to investigate outside. And what did he discover? To his dismay, he found a giant alone sleeping in the forest, and his snores making the most terrible of noise. Thor disliked the giants with great disdain, but as he approached the giant to slay him with hammer in hand, the giant suddenly stood up to greet them. "Hello, my name is Skrimir, but I do not need to ask your name, almighty thunder god, for you are Thor, and you have been using my glove for a place to sleep, it seems." Confused, Thor and his companions decided to investigate, only to come to the realization that they had been sleeping inside of the giant's glove, with the side rube being the thumb of the glove itself. Skrimir asked Thor if he could join them on their journey and offered to carry all their belongings in his food bag. Reluctantly, Thor agreed to this, and they set off towards the hall of Loki, deep within Jotunheim. As evening approaches, the giant found them a place to rest underneath the shade of a great oak tree. He left Thor have the bag of provisions and said he was going to sleep and that Thor should prepare himself for a meal for him and his friends. The giant began to snore, and as Thor tried to open the bag, he found that he could not. No matter how much strength, he was not unable to lift the bag. He was so enraged that he threw his hammer at the sleeping giant's head. But Skrymir only awoke for a brief moment, thinking that an acorn had fallen upon his head. It feels like an acorn has dropped upon my head. No matter. And then the giant returned to sleep. 2 more attempts in the night, Thor tried to slay the giant. In this way, and it was the same result every time. The giant would awake thinking that something from the tree had fallen on him, disturbing his sleep. Frustrated, Thor retired to sleep. And in that morning, Skrymir had parted ways with him and company, with a caveat that they would find bigger men than he and not to boast in the hall of Loki, for they would be mocked for being so small in stature. Thor, Loki, and the 2 humans were more than happy to see the giant go. They were not happy to see his face. Halfway through the day, they came upon a great fortress, a huge, fearsome stronghold. We indeed have arrived upon the home of Loki. Standing so tall, they strained their necks to see the top. Thor tried to open the gate to enter, but could not, so the party wound up having to squeeze through the bars instead. And once inside, they beheld an enormous hall with 2 large tables, with several giants seated around them, and in the midst of them was Loki himself. Thor introduced himself to the great giant, but Loki commented that there must be more to this mighty Thor than he sees before him. Ha 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 ha! Utgardi laughed. This cannot be Thor. This cannot be the mighty god that the Skalds have talked about. I add that no one is permitted to stay who does not contain some skill or knowledge greater than other men. Loki decided to stand up to the Loki giant and challenged any man to an eating contest, for he could eat faster than anyone in the 9 realms. So Utgarda called to one of his men by the name of Loki, pitted him against Loki in the eating contest. The other giants brought out a huge trough of meat and placed it between the 2 contestants in the center hall. They ate and they ate. They feasted and feasted until the end. Loki ate till the middle, and Loki met him too. The only difference was that Loki ate but the meat, but Loki ate the meat, the bones, even the trough itself. The Giant King called his man the winner of the contest, a victory that no one could deny. Secondly, the great giant asked Thjalfi if he could compete, and Thjalfi replied that I am the fastest man of all the 9 realms. No man can beat me in a race. So therefore, they went outside the great stronghold to a large plot of land, and Utgardi called upon a man by the name of Hugi. In the first round, Hugi finished the race, and to look around to find his opponents, that Thjalfi did not fare too well. 2 races, and then even losing by a bow's length. It was clear once again that Thjalfi lost the contest. So in the 3rd trial, Loki turned to Thor and asked him, which challenge do you partake in, Thunder God? Thor, visibly angry, said he could outdrink any man. Any man in the 9 realms dare not take on Thor in the contest of drink. So Utgardi made a call to his cupbearer, who brought out an enormous horn to the Thunder God. Thor turned this horn up and began to drink, and drink, and drink for what seemed like an eternity. Thor took the horn from his mouth and realized barely a drop had been emptied. Loki had said that great men empty the horn in but 1 drink. Some lesser great men can empty it in 2. But 3 drinks is not that impressive. Thor, however, tried twice more to empty the horn down from the brim so it could be carried without spilling. But he failed. The contest was over. Defeated, Thor handed the horn back to Loki, the Thunder God, was now enraged, his eyes turning red. So Utgarda Loki then proceeded to challenge Thor to another contest. To lift his cat off the ground is usually a child's game. For you, Thunder God, this should be easily enough. A great grey cat pounced down in the middle of the hall, and Thor went out and grasped it, attempting to lift it above his head. Unfortunately, the cat's back kept arching, and as large as it was, Thor was only tall enough to bring its paws from the floor. Utgarda pronounced that he had predicted this challenge would go like that, since Thor is a smaller man, shorter than the other men in this hall. So Thor roared, "If you think I'm so small, Jotun, choose someone to wrestle with me. I am now angry." Utgarda Loki looked around the hall at his men and decided it would not be dignified for any of them to wrestle Thor. So he called out his nurse, an old woman by the name of Ellie, who he said had brought down men no less stronger than Thor. Thor was insulted the choice of his opponent, but took on the match anyway. They battled and they battled, back and forth, but Thor did not fare well. Every time he put his strength into grapple, the elderly giantess held her ground, and eventually Thor lost his footing, and the giantess put him down into one knee. By then it was late at night, and Utgarda Loki stopped the contests. He offered Thor and his companions hospitality and a place to stay for the night. The next day, upon waking, Thor, Loki, and Thor's bondservants prepared to leave the hall of Utgarda, but the great giant met them in the hall with hospitality and a table laden out for breakfast. On the way out of the fortress, Utgarda followed Thor and his companions for a short while. That's when the giant decided to tell them the truth. He looked at Thor and told him that he was really the giant Skrymir, and he would never invite Thor into his hall again, for the Thunder God had almost brought destruction upon them. The night that Thor tried to kill Skrymir, the giant had moved a mountain beside his head. Skrymir admitted to have shape-shifting abilities, so the god would not notice when he moved the mountain. Thor had left 3 square valleys with the strikes of his hammer. Then when Loki tried to eat faster than Loki, the contest was unfair, because Loki was in fact wildfire, and the man Thjalfi raced was Utgarda Loki's own thoughts. The horn that Thor drank from was actually connected to the depths of the ocean. So Thor drank and drank, but only so much as to create the tides. And the cat was in fact actually Jormungandr, the great world serpent of Midgard, who was so vast that his body enveloped the entire world. But Thor picked it up almost the world, almost reaching the sky. Even he thought that he'd only lifted the paws off the ground. Thor was growing so angry that Utgarda Loki then proceeded to tell him that the old woman that the Thunder God wrestled was actually old age, time incarnate. Impressed by how long Thor kept himself on his feet, but ultimately all man does fall to time. Finally, Thor lost his temper and threw his hammer at Skrymir, but the giant, along with his fortress, suddenly disappeared and left in his wake a beautiful sight, a great flower dappled plain that stretched out in front of Thor, and his companions and his great hall were no longer to be seen. Deceived by the Jotun's magic, a cautionary tale of how not everything in this life is what as it seems, and that any ego can be humiliated upon. Thus the story concludes. I thank you, fellow brothers and sisters, for this time shared together. Join me in the next episode as I lament upon the wrangling of Loki from the poem of Lokasenna. And until next time, in Odin's Keep, my friends. Skål!